had this dream on November 16th, 2014, and this was about a ship that was getting ready to sail, and I had thought that it was more just for around people I know, but as I started researching this, I realized, wow, there's some significant patterns repeating here. I dreamed that I was in this city, Lebanon, and in scriptures, Lebanon is known as the source of building materials, wood for Solomon's temple, and etc. I'll post in the description box. White, the White Mountain of Syria is the loftiest and most celebrated mountain range in Syria. Is a mountain consisting of two ridges on the border of Syria and what's called Palestine. Okay, in this dream, a worship leader, a wife and her husband were in a meeting of some sort. In the room, there was a model of an ancient ship that had been in the process of being restored. There were no sails on it. It was older than the European ships because it only had 2 masts for sails, but the sails weren't ready to sail yet. In the dream, I knew this was a replica of a real ship, and it had originated in Dayton. And Dayton means day town, or light town, also homestead, or dairy town. And I heard the Daytonians would know about this. I saw in the dream a life-size ship that was the exact same thing as the model. Then I saw the ancient map, and I saw a picture of a ship on a river getting ready to sail. The sails hadn't been raised yet, but it was close. Now, this was November of last year. At this point, I was outside of the building where the room was located in Lebanon, and a little girl comes running up and states, "There's a fire." I follow her in her direction and find a pipe coming out of the ground with flames coming out of it. I pull the fire alarm that was outside on this brick building. The girl disappears, and a National Guardsman, EMT, person named John Eric, which means Yahweh is gracious and ruler or prince, comes running up and asks where. I point to the pipe shooting out of with flames shooting out, and he shuts off the valve. And I dreamed I was back in the room, and the worship leader was getting ready to direct something musical where this replica was. So I looked up USS Dayton, which was a ship in World War II. And one of the ships, there was 2 of them, I think, and it had been renamed the USS Monterey. It had a fire on it during a storm that nearly swept the future President Gerald Ford off the deck. Now, as I was researching this, the Mayflower I just went to something that had some information about the Mayflower last weekend. And the Mayflower departed from Plymouth, England, and headed for America on September 6th. Now, also, on September 6th, the Christopher Columbus had departed San Sebastián de la Gomera for what turned out to be a 5-week voyage across the ocean. So you have the Mayflower in 1620 on September 6th, and then you have Christopher Columbus September 6th in 1492. So it's the same date, only like 128 years separating those. Columbus also explored the northeast of Cuba, landing on October 28th in 1492, and the northern coast of Hispaniola, present-day Haiti and the Dominican Republic. And then Santa Maria ran aground on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1492. And then the Mayflower also had Cape Cod was sighted on November 9th, 1620. But October was a really bad month for a lot of storms in the Atlantic. And then what happened after the sun, they spotted Cape Cod just as the sun rose on September 9th. And they, on December 25th, 1620, they had finally decided upon Plymouth and began construction of their first buildings. Now, at the same time, this was terrible for the First Nations people. Now, in 1970, Native Americans had gathered at noon on Coles Hill in Plymouth to commemorate a national day of mourning on the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. Many Native Americans do not celebrate the arrival of the Pilgrims and other European settlers. To them, Thanksgiving Day is a reminder of the genocide of millions of their people, the theft of their lands, and the relentless assault on their culture. Participants in the National Day of Mourning honor Native ancestors and the struggles of Native people to survive today. It is a day of remembrance and spiritual connection, as well as a protest of the racism and oppression which Native Americans continue to experience. This is the text of the plaque on Coles Hill overlooking Plymouth Rock, Plymouth, Massachusetts. Now, the UAIN used the National Day of Mourning to educate people about the history of the Wampanoag people. The UAIN representatives say the only true element of the Thanksgiving story is that the Pilgrims would not have survived their first years in New England without the aid of already existing crops. Now, the chief had stated in 2014 in November, historically, Thanksgiving represents our first counter with the eventual erosion of our sovereignty, and there's nothing wrong with mourning that loss. In fact, as long as we don't wallow in regret and resentment, it's healthy to mourn. It's a necessary part of the healing process. I just thought the dates were very interesting and how they were kind of overlapping. And so the ship, it looked like this, but the wood was very intricate. It was really interesting. And then the only other thing that I could find was kind of like this ancient ship, but it didn't have the oars on it at all. So it was definitely ancient. So I mean, history is written by those people that control the text and the writing and all that other stuff. But there was also a different dynamic of this, and I thought that was interesting. And as I was looking for maps to try to kind of find out what an ancient map would look like that I saw in my dream, which I couldn't find, but I did run across this. Cherokee Indians believe in flat earth, and I thought it was interesting that to the Cherokees, the earth was a flat disc of water with a large floating island in the middle. The earth hung by 4 cords, and it's kind of the same thing as an ancient map that I ran across that I also will post in the description box. So I just wanted to post this because I felt that it was significant with these patterns repeating, and with the state of our country the way it is and now what's going on. So I'm praying for mercy and for all cultures just to turn to the Lord and repent and get ready for Him. Shalom.